All right, welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Oh, this is going to be a good one.
it is, this one you guys really sent in a lot of stuff on this one.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah, you want to know the real story, behind Arsenal's 5-1 win over Manchester City, beyond just the headlines, right?
Sure.
And you sent over match reports, reactions from players and legends, even some deep stats, and trust me, some of what we found I think is going to surprise you.
Definitely.
So, what does this match say about Arsenal's potential? Are we seeing some cracks in City's dominance? Let's dive in.
Yeah, you know what's so fascinating here is that you're right. It wasn't just a win, it was a statement. A
Right?
statement about Arsenal's title aspirations
Yeah.
and a potential shift, I think, in the balance of power in the Premier League.
Exactly. And to understand that shift, we got to go beyond the score line, right?
Absolutely.
So let's rewind to those opening minutes at the Emirates, 103 seconds on the clock, and boom, Arsenal's ahead. Remember that article from The Athletic you flagged? They pointed out that Arsenal had targeted City's right side where Akanji was playing.
Yeah, his error. It wasn't just a mistake, it was part of a pattern. I think Arsenal's pressing, it wasn't just high, it was targeted,
Right.
forcing City into those uncomfortable areas.
Yeah, and it worked perfectly. But, City did equalize, though, right?
They did.
Holland's header, did that make you think, okay, here comes the City we all know?
Honestly, not really.
Mm.
Remember that ESPN analyst you follow?
Yeah.
He's been saying that City's midfield was looking vulnerable,
Right.
and in this match, it showed even with Holland scoring, they never really controlled the game.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting because even though City, briefly leveled the score, Arsenal's response was immediate and ruthless. Party's goal, though, deflected, underlined their dominance.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about the goals, though. Remember those stats you sent?
Yeah.
Arsenal won the ball back in City's half, twice as often as their season average. They were completely disrupting City's build-up play.
And then came the moment that will surely be etched in the memory of every Arsenal fan. Young Miles Lewis-Skelly, making his debut, scores his first goal for the Gunners.
Talk about a dream debut. This wasn't just about individual brilliance, though. It was a culmination of everything Arsenal had been doing right. The high press, the targeted attacks,
Yeah.
the relentless energy.
It's like they had a blueprint for dismantling City, and they executed it flawlessly.
Yeah.
But even more than the tactical side, it was the confidence they displayed that really stood out.
You can see that confidence reflected in Kai Havertz's post-match interview.
Oh, yeah.
He talked about how they'd been working on the press specifically to disrupt City's rhythm, and it clearly paid off.
Absolutely. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about City. We've touched upon their midfield struggles, but defensively, they looked surprisingly shaky.
Yeah.
2 consecutive Premier League matches conceding multiple goals. That's not the City we're used to seeing.
No, it's not. And this goes back to what that ESPN analyst was saying. They've become a bit reliant on individual brilliance, especially in defense. And when those individuals have an off day, the system starts to show cracks.
And it wasn't just Akanji Ortega in goal had a few shaky moments. It makes you wonder if Ederson's absence was more impactful than they anticipated. He brings a certain calmness and authority that was definitely missing.
Yeah, his distribution is key to how City builds from the back. But even with Ederson, I'm not sure it would have changed the outcome drastically. Arsenal were just that good. They were hungry, they were organized, and they were clinical.
All right, before we get to the title race implications and what the pundits are saying, let's talk about one more thing. Thierry Henry's reaction, you sent over a clip of him on Sky Sports, and he wasn't just excited. He was almost worried.
Remember that quote you highlighted?
Yeah.
He said, "This was beautiful, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Remember the last time we thought he knows how quickly things can change in football."
Yeah, he's been there, done that. He's seen Arsenal teams crumble under pressure before, so its caution is understandable. But even with that warning, he couldn't hide his excitement at what he saw.
No. He was particularly impressed with Arsenal's attacking potency. He called it fluid, creative, and devastating.
And he wasn't wrong. They ripped City's defense apart time and again.
Time and again.
Okay, so we've unpacked Arsenal's tactical masterclass, City's surprising vulnerabilities, and even got Thierry Henry's take on the match. But what does this all mean for the bigger picture, the title race, for instance?
That's where it gets really interesting. This win has thrown a wrench into things. Arsenal are now just 6 points behind Liverpool, although they've played one more game.
But Liverpool has a game in hand against Everton, a win there, and their lead could extend once again. What does this do to the pressure on Arsenal? Do they have the mentality to keep this up?
That's the million-dollar question. But what this match has shown is that they have the quality and the belief To challenge for the title, they've sent a message to the rest of the league. Arsenal are for real.
And that message has been received loud and clear, not just by the other contenders, but by Manchester City as well. They're now 15 points adrift of the leaders, a massive gap to close.
Yeah, it's a mountain to climb even for a team of City's caliber. And it raises some serious questions about their ability to keep pace in this title race.
So let's dive into that next. What are the experts saying about City's chances? Is this just a blip, or are we seeing the start of a decline? And how does this result impact the other contenders?
Let's unpack all that in the next part of our deep dive. Yeah, it's a fascinating question, isn't it? Is this just a blip for City, or are we seeing a dynasty in decline? The experts seem divided, and the articles you sent reflect that.
Okay, so let's break down what they're saying. You highlighted a piece from The Guardian where they argued that City's aging squad is starting to show its age.
Right. They pointed out that key players like Kevin De Bruyne and Kyle Walker are not getting any younger. They're not as quick, not as dynamic as they used to be. And that lack of pace was exposed by Arsenal's youthful energy.
But then you also sent over an article from ESPN where they completely disagreed. They said that City's dip in form is more down to a lack of motivation and hunger after winning so much.
Yeah, their argument was that Guardiola needs to find a way to reignite that fire in his players' bellies.
Yeah.
They need to rediscover that desire, that relentless pursuit of victory that made them so dominant in the first place.
So two contrasting viewpoints, one focusing on physical decline, the other on mental fatigue. It's almost like a nature versus nurture debate applied to football.
Exactly, and the truth probably lies somewhere in between. It's likely a combination of both factors.
Yeah.
The aging squad is undoubtedly a concern, but so is the potential for complacency after years of success.
Well, remember that interview with Guardiola you flagged? He acknowledged that his team was struggling to maintain the same intensity and focus as in previous seasons. He even admitted that Arsenal deserved the victory.
And that's a telling admission from a manager who rarely gives credit to his opponents. He knows that something needs to change. He knows that City can't just rely on their past glories to carry them through.
So where do they go from here? How do they address these issues and get back on track?
Well, the ESPN article you shared offered some interesting suggestions. They argued that Guardiola needs to shake things up, maybe bring in some fresh faces, inject some new blood into the squad.
That makes sense. A new signing, a big-name arrival, could provide a much-needed boost, both in terms of quality and motivation.
Right. They also suggested that Guardiola might need to tweak his tactics. They pointed out that City has become a bit predictable, a bit too reliant on their possession-based style. They need to be more adaptable, more unpredictable.
Remember those stats you sent, the ones about City's passing accuracy in the final third? It was significantly lower than their usual average. It's like Arsenal figured out how to disrupt their passing lanes, forcing them into rushed decisions.
Right. They need to find ways to break down stubborn defenses to create more clear-cut chances. They can't just rely on individual moments of brilliance from players like Haaland.
Speaking of Haaland, he's still scoring goals, but he seemed a bit isolated in this match. Remember that analysis from The Athletic? They suggested that City's midfield isn't providing him with the same level of service as last season.
Yeah, they argued that De Bruyne isn't creating as many chances, and that the absence of Bernardo Silva, who moved to Barcelona in the summer, has left a creative void in their midfield.
And that lack of creativity was evident in this match. They struggled to break down Arsenal's well-organized defense. It was like they were running out of ideas.
So it seems like Guardiola has a lot to ponder. He needs to find solutions, and he needs to find them fast. The longer this dip in form continues, the harder it will be to catch up with the leaders.
And let's not forget, it's not just Arsenal they need to worry about. Liverpool are still the team to beat, and they've been quietly going about their business, picking up points week after week.
You flagged a really interesting point from a former Liverpool player in one of the articles. He said that this season is shaping up to be a battle of attrition. The team that stays the healthiest, the team that avoids major injuries, will be in the best position to challenge for the title.
And that's where City's lack of squad depth could come back to haunt them, especially with the Champions League and domestic cups still in play. They're going to be stretched thin.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, this is still Manchester City. They've been here before, they've faced adversity, and they've come out on top.
They have a world-class manager, a squad full of talented players, and a winning mentality.
Writing them off at this stage would be foolish. But this match against Arsenal has undoubtedly exposed some weaknesses that other teams will now be looking to exploit.
Okay, so we've talked about City's struggles, but let's shift the focus back to Arsenal for a bit. This win has to be a huge confidence booster for them, right?
Absolutely. It's a statement victory, a sign that they've arrived as genuine title contenders.
Yeah.
But the question is, can they maintain this level of performance over a 38-game season?
That's the key, isn't it? Consistency. I remember that article from The Independent you shared. They looked at Arsenal's recent history and pointed out that they've often struggled to maintain momentum after a big win.
Yeah, they tend to get overconfident,
Yeah.
then drop points against teams they should be beating. That's what Arteta needs to guard against. He needs to keep his players grounded, focused on the next game, not getting carried away by the hype.
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act, isn't it? Keeping the belief high, but also
Yeah.
staying focused and avoiding complacency.
Exactly. And it's not just about mentality, it's about squad depth as well. Can they cope with injuries? Can they handle the pressure of a title race? These are questions that will be answered in the coming weeks and months.
Well, this is where it gets really exciting, right? We have a genuine title race on our hands. Arsenal, Liverpool, and potentially even City, all vying for the top spot.
And let's not forget, the other contenders, teams like Manchester United, Tottenham, and Newcastle, are all capable of causing upsets and shaking things up.
It's going to be a fascinating battle full of twists and turns, but before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about Arsenal's ability to maintain their intensity. Remember that piece from the Times where they compared this Arsenal team to the Invincibles?
Right. They argued that this team has the same kind of spirit, the same kind of hunger that drove that legendary team to an undefeated season.
Mm-hmm.
They highlighted the team's togetherness, their work ethic, and their belief in Arteta's vision.
But they also cautioned that it's still early days, there's a long way to go, and a lot can happen between now and the end of the season.
Exactly. But the fact that they're even being compared to the Invincibles shows how far they've come under Arteta. They're playing with a swagger, a confidence that we haven't seen from Arsenal in years.
Okay, so we've analyzed City's struggles, debated Arsenal's title credentials, and even touched upon the other contenders, but what about the long-term implications of this match?
That's what you wanted to get to,
Yeah.
right? The bigger picture. What does this match tell us about the future of the Premier League? And more importantly, what does it mean for you as a fan?
It does feel like more than just a match result, doesn't it? It feels like something shifted.
Yeah, it does. And you specifically wanted to know what this means for the future of the league and for you as a fan, right?
Exactly. So let's get into it. We've talked about Arsenal's potential City's challenges, but is this a one-off or is this a sign of bigger changes happening?
That Times article that compared Arsenal to the Invincibles, remember, they also talked about how the Premier League's landscape is evolving. It's not just the Big Six anymore.
You're right. Newcastle's a force now. Brighton's playing incredible football. Even Aston Villa is punching above their weight. Is that part of what's making this season so unpredictable?
I think so, yeah. The gap between the top and the rest is shrinking. And that means every point matters. Every match is a battle. That's exciting for you as a fan because, well, anyone could beat anyone on their day.
That's why you sent over those articles about financial fair play, right? You were curious if that's playing a role in this shift.
It's definitely a factor, yeah. The stricter regulations are making it harder for the traditional giants to just buy their way to success. They have to be smarter, develop young talent, and maybe take some risks.
Like Arsenal did with Lewis Skelly. I mean, giving a teenager his debut in that match that shows real belief in the future and maybe a willingness to do things differently.
Exactly. And those financial fair play rules are also giving smaller clubs a chance to compete. They can build sustainably attract talent and maybe even challenge for European spots. Look at what Brighton's doing.
It's almost like the Premier League is becoming, well, more like the NFL in a way. More parity, more teams with a realistic shot at glory.
That's an interesting comparison. And yeah, that's reflected in the way fans are engaging with the league. You're not just following the big clubs anymore. You're following players' specific styles, underdog stories.
And that's why this Arsenal win feels so significant. It's not just about the result, it's about what it represents. A young, exciting team built on smart recruitment and tactical innovation challenging the established order.
And that's why Thierry Henry's reaction is so interesting. He's seen Arsenal go through cycles. He knows the pitfalls. But even he couldn't hide his excitement at what this team represents.
Remember that quote you underlined. This is more than just football. This is about belief. Belief that things can change, that the impossible is possible.
That's powerful. And it connects to something you mentioned earlier. You're not just a passive observer of this sport. You're a participant, in a way. You're following the stories, analyzing the data, forming your own opinions.
And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're not giving you answers, we're exploring the questions together. What does this match mean for Arsenal, for City, for the future of the league?
Those are questions you'll continue to grapple with as the season unfolds. But one thing is certain, the Premier League is entering a new era. An era of unpredictability, excitement, and a belief that anything is possible.
And honestly, what could be more exciting than that? So as we wrap up, here's a final thought for you to ponder. If Arsenal can sustain this challenge, if City can adapt and evolve, and if the rest of the league continues to close the gap, what does that mean for the future of the sport you love?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep. The answers are out there waiting to be discovered.